know it's God's comic, Brad Stine. This is Brad Stine Has Issues Where Comedy, Christianity, and Conservatism collide in a cacophony of clarity. And who would have thunk that today we will be interviewing the lead singer of one of the most, maybe the most famous Christian rock and roll band ever, or at least up there, Stryper and Michael Sweet. This is not what I had expected, but I was really excited to meet with him, talk with him, find out all about Stryper and how unique they were. And they really were unique because, keep in mind, we're talking about a Christian band that used to tour with secular bands with the, sex, drugs, and rock and roll thing. So that, to me, was interesting. Let's find out, how did they do it? How did they maintain their faith? How did it not go sideways? And how did they keep their dignity by standing for their faith? This is what we will be talking about with Michael Sweet of Stryper. My son Wyatt had a band of his very own. He was only 10 years old. They wrote their own songs, and he struggled deeply with the drugs and the sex and the rock and roll that was come upon him. He did not succumb to it, but boy, did they come after him. Why? Do you remember having that band at 10 and, man, all the groupies that would follow you guys and try to lull you into despair and to compromise using usually, candy bars and or pop?
Yeah. It's the rock life's a hard life, as they say in the business.
It is it's kind of like being between a rock and a hard place, in that you want to have fun, you want to sing, you want to bust it out, but there's all this energy that comes out of songs. And here's something I want to ask you, Wyatt, because you were actually in a band, we've brought this up many times over the years with Brad Stine Has Issues, that you were in Electric Needlefish, let me say it properly so that people can go Google you. Wyatt, I don't know if you've been Googled a lot, but it's painful, and I'm going to be very honest with you. It's something you want to avoid as much as possible.
I mean, not everyone can say they were in a band at all, so I got that going for me, but when you listen to the band, you definitely can tell that the band made up of fourth graders was definitely a band made up of fourth graders.
Why do you always seem to be very defensive or not defensive? It's the opposite. It's almost like you are disparaging to your little group. Now, yeah, you were just young boys and you were friends, and you guys, it's not like you toured, and it's not like you practiced hours and hours and hours every day and did the hard work and put out albums. And I get it. It was a little boy band, but you guys weren't bad. You really weren't. Your guitar player was very good. You, as a drummer, very good. Let's see, you had bass, drum, guitar. Oh, and vocals. Yeah, that's right. Your vocalist didn't play. I was trying to think of, why am I missing an instrument? But your vocalist didn't play an instrument. He vocalized and he wrote lyrics. Anyways, now, do you honestly, let's just be honest, because right now people are jumping onto YouTube looking up for Electric Needlefish, Battle of the Bands, and they're going to find you full of hair, by the way, thick, large, long hair as a young boy. But it seems like you feel, oh, it was so bad and hackneyed and everything. It really wasn't. You guys were really good, I think, for your age. And most importantly, you wrote your own songs. You weren't a cover band.
The best way that I can describe my issues with the songs we produced, imagine this. You were an artist, okay? You paint. That's your thing. And you spend all of the talent and ability you have to paint what you believe is a masterpiece.
Will this make better sense if you say, let's say you're a comedian, because I really am, and that way it's like it'll be more personal, or should we still go with the painting?
Maybe you should let me finish the analogy.
Yeah. That's what I was going to say. I was going to say, why don't I just let you finish your analogy, and then I can break it down and see how it failed.
Okay. So you're an artist. Your magnum opus is this abstract piece that you believe is a turning point in discussions on, say, sadness and melancholy. And you bring that piece to an art show. And you win a reward. And you're so excited because all your hard work paid off.
Yeah.
And then you go and you look at the trophy and it says first place in the depictions of happiness contest.
Oh.
How would you feel in that situation? You did succeed, but did you succeed for the reasons you wanted to?
Okay, that's an interesting. So you're saying that, you really do this beautiful thing and you have this real insight as to what you're really trying to say and what the subtext of this painting was, and you really tried to put all kinds of sort of deep nuance and sophistication into it in the hopes that people would analyze it for such and they bring them to deep meanings of the morose and of the thoughts of grief, and yet they see it as someone who understood their pain and came alongside and almost gave them a little hope that I'm not alone in this pain. And come to find out, you won and you feel like I've accomplished something, I'm helping humanity, only to find out that you were in the category of the most jovial, fun clown college confidential award, and you're like, wait, no, you liked it for the wrong reason. So I think I see what you're saying.
Exactly.
Well,
they liked the band because we were young and we did things that were pretty good, not because the things we did were necessarily musically good.
Okay, so do you mean technically you guys weren't as skilled musicians as you're thinking, and they're just saying, yeah, they're not that good, but for little boys, they're really good? Or do you feel like they were over emphasizing your little songs and giving them more credit than you think they're due? Now, you're an adult male who's played all kinds of genres in legitimate bands with hardcore musicians. So obviously you can look backwards and go, well, that was just starting, and it was like me doing open mic nights and thinking, oh yeah, that's how I'm going to gauge my comedy talent. No, of course I get better. But I'm talking about for the time frame in the age group, it's not like they're settling. Everybody assumes you're younger, but yeah, there's young bands that aren't that good either, and clearly aren't. But that's when you kind of say, yeah, but they're cute, so let's just let them do their little scheme until they move on and realize this is not for them. But you guys were really, people liked you. You had little fans. People would come see you. Matter of fact, you were in a band camp in Nashville, Tennessee, which ain't, nothing to sneeze at. Some great musicians were here. Heck, one of your teachers was, I forgot his name, but he wrote the famous, well, it was a hit called Magnet and Steel in the 70s. It was a popular top 10 hit, and he was one of the instructors. So you had some legitimate folks in there. And so they, you guys all came back together your last year in the band as grown 20-year-olds, and you guys played Black Hole, which was your famous song, kind of a tribute to 10 years later, say goodbye. And it was cool. It was an updated version, and there were some other guys jumped in with some drum elements, and it was played at a more sophisticated level. It was pretty cool. So I don't know, son. I think you underestimate how good you guys actually were. So if you're basing it on an adult professional drummer compared to a younger boy learning, then yeah, of course, it wasn't as good as it's going to be. But I do think that you undervalue how good you guys were for your age.
Individually, I believe that we had individual good parts, but as a whole, I just I can't listen to those songs, at least not the early ones. The later ones, I think, were fine.
Okay.
But the early ones, I just felt like were more cobbling together a song for the sake of having a song rather than actually going in depth and making them good.
All right, well, fair enough. And you're talking about 9 and 10-year-old boys.
Listen, age does not matter. Standards are standards. If Stevie Wonder smashed his head on the keyboard and released that when he was 9, I don't think anyone's going to give him credit for that.
Well, they would, because he's blind. So for him to be able to find the keyboard with his head as a blind man, I think is an accomplishment.
Well, the head's a bigger target, so it's easier to hit.
Right. And it's harder to form chords, that's for sure, or melody lines with your forehead. But he used Stevie Wonder, and I don't know. I guess what I'm getting at is music is an important part of life. Music is something that people connect to. I have said this on numerous occasions, and I might have even brought it up to Michael Sweet. I don't remember if I said this to him or not. But, comedy, and I've been doing comedy for 30 years, stand-up comedy, so I've done thousands of comedy shows in front of every type of audience. I did it when I was younger, and I will say this, I can look back at my older stuff and go, yeah, I do it differently now. Oh, I think I know how to do that better this time. Oh man, you should have waited. I've seen old material. If you go on YouTube, folks, and you go watch Rebel Without a Curse, which was the first kind of thing I ever put out there, which was a composite of a lot of material I had compiled over the 10 years in 15 years in clubs, and put a little hour's worth together. Much of that got cobbled together into other albums, but you see the renaissance of some material that I did on that album that I ended up doing on Put a Helmet On and some others, and it was a few years later, because Helmet was done in like 2003 and this was done in 99, so it's only 4 years later, but you can see how the joke got a little bit different, got a little bit more sophisticated, a little bit more pause, a little bit, but you're always tweaking. The thing about comedy is you can do a joke for 20 years and year 21, you do something different about it and it's even better. And you go, oh, that's what I've been missing. So I do understand that looking back, you're going to, but I also realize that you have to take into account that when you start, and you're where you are, and it's got to go somewhere. And to have that nostalgia of seeing who you were and what you were trying to do, and to see, that wasn't so bad, and to even see, here's what I mean, Wyatt. If let's say your buddies got back to you and said, let's do some crazy high-end versions of our songs. But this time we're going to kind of rewrite them with more adult sensibilities to it. We might tweak some of the lyrics. We might add some chorus or bridge elements that we don't have before. Don't you think that you could make those songs, fairly more robust and interesting, and people would actually like them?
I don't know, man. Maybe. Music's a pretty complicated thing,
Mm-hmm. What do you think is the most difficult instrument to play? What do people
Piano.
think? You think piano is the most difficult?
I would say so, yes, because it's been around the longest. The standards are the highest because, well, if you can play piano, you can basically play anything else. And all of those stringed instruments, and yes, piano is technically a stringed instrument.
Not technically, it is a stringed instrument, but it's also a percussion instrument.
Yeah, much more than a harpsichord. The harpsichord was basically the precursor to the piano.
Yes.
Same thing, except it wasn't pressure sensitive.
Okay.
I'm sure you've heard it. Have you ever seen like a show or something with like a elegant, sort of fancy, smancy setting, and then you hear that how do I describe it? It's like
I don't know. You're doing a horrible job.
I know. I'm trying.
Okay.
It's like a high-pitched sort of almost metallic sort of instrument that plays to illustrate that this is a fancy place or a fancy person.
No, I don't know what you mean.
Well, if you've heard of it, that's a harpsichord. It's
harpsichord. You're talking about like from the 1500s or so, the precursor to the piano.
That's literally the exact words that I used in that exact format. Yes.
Did you use the word precursor to the piano?
I absolutely did, in that order, in fact.
Or did you say the piano precursor?
No, I said precursor to the piano.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Dang it. All right.
Yeah, so you know what I'm talking about then, right?
Yeah, so it was a instrument people cursed and would curse because it was so difficult to play, thus the term precursor. This is how you curse prior to the piano, where you would curse even more because it was so hard.
No, you're trying too hard.
I'm confused. No. Wyatt, I got to tell you that I did a precursory, this isn't the right word, but I wanted to throw it back in again. I did a cursory glance at the Googled internet, and I was curious if there is kind of a consensus on instruments that are hard to play, or what people consider the most difficult instruments to play. And there were some answers. You know what the answer was?
No, I do not.
Okay. Well, the one that I thought they were going to say, I literally, it was what I had heard or had speculated that they were going to say this, and it was in it, but they gave three that they said are considered the most difficult. But the first one they mentioned is the one that I thought they were going to mention, and I, for some reason, I don't know why, because I'm not a musician like you, but somewhere in the line I've heard of or read of or whatever that this was considered an incredibly difficult instrument. It's called the oboe.
Oboe.
The oboe, because have you ever seen people play the clarinet or the saxophone? You have that big,
Yeah,
you have a reed and a big mouthpiece, right? It fits pretty much large.
Yeah.
Okay, have you ever seen the reed on an oboe?
No, I have not.
It's about the width like of a matchstick. It's like this really thin, skinny, tiny little reed, and it has a double reed, whatever that means. I guess one on top of the other. So you have to blow with a very specific lip clamping onto this tiny, almost like you were sucking on a straw, but blowing and getting the enough energy into that instrument to give it to sound like a sax with this tiny aperture of blowage. But and then they said the French horn. Now, I didn't know the French horn. I figured a French horn was like a trumpet. It has like a, what do they call the trumpet blow it into thing?
Trumpet.
Yeah, but the thing that goes in, you can pull it out and put it back in, and it's round. And it goes. What's that thing? Does it have a? Does that have a name? The thing that actually they blow into, the circle of
the mouthpiece?
Yes, maybe.
I don't.
Anyways, the mouthpiece, it looks similar on a trumpet as on a French horn. So, but somehow they said that's really difficult. You know what else they said was really hard? The violin.
Oh yeah, that totally makes sense.
Now, violin doesn't have frets, so you have to know exactly where everything is and figure it out, and then you got to pull this thing back and forth. But the oboe is in the running for the most difficult. And many years ago, a friend of mine got me the, what do you call it? The soundtrack to a movie called The Mission. And it was Enrico, Enrico Manticcioni, or some Italian name. They all sound the same. Ridiculous. The same guy that wrote The Good, Bad, and the Ugly,
Yeah.
Okay, that guy was just famous for these incredible soundtracks. Anyways, he wrote the soundtrack for this thing, and it's beautiful. It's beautiful. Matter of fact, Wyatt, I found a clip, and one of the clips from this entire soundtrack is called Gabriel's Oboe. Now, Gabriel, of course, angel, yeah. But anyways, it's a clip, and I found it, and I'm going to, roll the dice that we can show it without them somehow giving us copyright infringement. It was at an orchestra. But anyways, I found it on YouTube. I thought, well, if they can put it on, why can't I put it on? And we'll see. But anyways, I did think, let's show you guys this beautiful little oboe solo. You'll see how difficult it looks like it would be to play it, but how pretty the sound is. Folks, this is Gabriel's oboe. So I think you can see why. I mean, do you find that kind of stuff beautiful? Do you like orchestral sound, Wyatt, at all? Do you at all like the orchestra sound of orchestra?
Of course I do.
You do.
In fact, one of my favorite genres of music is symphonic metal or symphonic rock.
Like who?
Oh gosh.
Yeah.
It's not so much bands that do it so much as certain songs of bands that include the orchestra.
Can you give me an example?
Dream Theater's got plenty of orchestral elements. And
What about that one that always plays a lot in Christmas time?
Trans-Siberian Orchestra?
Yeah, Trans-Siberian.
Yeah, I'd say they also count.
Okay. Anyways, I noticed that when we talk about music, and as of course, you know, we got Michael Sweet, which you did the editing. Did you enjoy editing that?
Yeah, it was pretty fun.
Was he an interesting guy?
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, very much so. And quite a trailblazer. But, you know, I did talk about, and I had to because I'm a Christian man, I had to talk about the idea of the demons and the satanic rock and roll because I grew up with this idea. I don't know if you heard this in church, Wyatt. Did you go to youth group or anything where they ever talked about how maybe rock music could be satanic or is used by Satan? Do you know of anybody in your life that might reference Satan as the author and the orchestra leader of this particular genre of music?
Probably Mom.
Mm-hmm. Now, do you, as a musician who's also a believer, so you have the Holy Spirit in him, is there music that turns you off a little bit, like you go, that your spirit goes, I don't want this. I don't want to hear this. This isn't my thing. I'm not into it. Any kind of music?
Not necessarily, but when I'm shuffling the music and just letting the phone pick whatever song it wants it is to be, occasionally there's one I'm like, not a fan of that.
Is it mainly the style of the melodic?
No, it's always the lyrics.
The lyrics. So if the lyrics are pretty graphic, you're like, I'm not into that. Yeah. So you probably aren't into a lot of rap. Isn't rap got a lot of bad language in it and so forth?
The bad ones do.
Yeah. Do you listen to rap at all?
POD has some rap-like elements, but I think they're more rap sung.
Okay. So you're not a rap guy. All right. I just wondered. And so anyways, well, I grew up with backward masking as something you have to fear. Do you ever heard of backward masking, Wyatt?
Oh, yeah, of course.
What is it?
It's when you record a track, especially doing like the records area, you would record a track backwards so that when played normally, there's just this random garbled nonsense. But if you play it backwards, it's actually some hidden message.
Right. Well, that's what they told us. And that we need to be careful about the evil satanic backwards messages. Well, guess what? I wrote a joke about that, about Satan is everywhere, including in our records, because I was taught in the 70s to get rid of, break, destroy, burn, bury, get rid of your records because of the backward masking, the evil that's there. And so I wrote a joke about it, and it looks like this.
But I also believe that this is a great and powerful belief system. And I want us to be able to talk about it to other people in an intelligent way. And we're always looking for ways to be against each other. When I was growing up in a church, they told me Catholics were all going to hell. All the Catholics are going to hell because they see Mary everywhere. Look, Mary's in the side of the road. Look at her. Mary's in a toaster. Look at that. Mary's in a tortilla. Run. And it's true. Catholics see Mary everywhere. Protestants see Satan everywhere. Oh, Satan's in my radio. Satan made me lose my job. No, your incompetence made you lose your job. Ever seen these people that always blame Satan for everything that happens in their life? If he did anything, he pretty much just woke them up that morning. They took it from there. Everybody's always looking for a place for Satan to show up, some weird place of cheating because Satan's going to show up. When I was growing up, it was backward masking. Backward masking. Satan's everywhere. Oh, he's going to be in the backwards records. Backwards records in the 80s, New Age. Satan's in the New Age. In the 90s, it was something, I'm sure. I don't know what it was. Now it's Harry Potter books. Harry Potter books. Don't even touch the cover of the Harry Potter book. I was in Albuquerque, New Mexico, and a church had a Harry Potter book burning. Let me tell you something. I believe as a believer in Jesus that everything you do is supposed to drive people to the cross and not away. And let's face it, nothing makes people come through the doors of a church like a good old-fashioned book burning, huh, folks? Use your mind. Think about people, how they perceive you. Anything you're about to do, you should think about the method first before you do it. And I think a good rule of thumb is if Hitler tried it, maybe go another direction. But I believe that intelligence should bring you to the precipice of faith, that this is not a religion of ridiculousness that we're just trying to find some way out, but that religion can teach you why you're here, and it can get you to that place where faith makes sense. So that's why when I see Christians acting stupid, I say it. Backward masking, 16, you know what I'm talking about. They said if you took certain rock and roll records, certain rock and roll, your 16 records are like giant CDs. Now we got CDs, so apparently Satan's in hell going, now what are we going to do? I get some Japanese demons on this technology immediately. Satan can't even do that. He'd hit a horn. CDs. Oh. See, that's where he is. That's where he was. They said if you took certain rock and roll records, here's what they told me, and you play them backwards, as so many of us tend to do. Excuse me, if you're starting to play your records backwards, perhaps you deserve to hear a message from Satan. He's probably just giving instructions. It's going the wrong way. You've got to use your mind. If words backwards are evil, all words backwards would be evil. Dallas, Texas, people would be dropping dead from vegetables. Coincidence? No, not when you realize Dallas backwards is salad. Only half you got that. Good, okay. Only half the people in Virginia get joked. Coincidence? No, not when you realize Virginia backwards is a... Catalina, most people in Catalina have spastic colons. Coincidence? No, not when you realize Catalina backwards is anal attack. See that right there? Should give you some information. We got a couple people, you can't say that in church, I don't believe. That's what they said.
Anyways, Wyatt, that was my attempt to find funny in some of the religious hysteria. I think I'm still a little confused by, even if somebody did record something backwards in something and you didn't hear it, you heard the front version and you didn't know that there was a backwards version. It would seem to me that if you're telling me that if I can say a sentence and if you played it backwards, it means something else or says something else, then that would apply to all sentences. That's why I kind of made the joke that I did. Every sentence, if you play it backwards, would theoretically have another way to talk about this, use this word. It's just coming the other direction. So, when is it like evil and when is it not? And either way, if I'm playing and speaking as I am right now, what if I said something that if you played it backwards, it said, the devil is good? How would you know? Because it's like backwards. So the whole concept just doesn't make sense to me. And I wanted to talk to Michael Sweet of Stryper about that. What did he think about that? Did he find any of those ideas silly or foolish? Or do you think there's something to it? You know why? The more we live in our lives, the more we're watching conspiracy theories seem to come to fruition, to truth. And it makes you wonder, if God exists, then evil must exist as well. It's funny. One of the things about God that bothers people who don't believe in him or reject him or walk away from him or just simply never accepted him in the first place is evil. They say, I see evil. I see children with bone cancer. I see young person hit and killed by a drunk driver. I see a young mother suddenly get cancer and die. I see a group of children killed in a house fire. I see a earthquake wiping out an entire apartment complex and killing people. There's all this evil. And if God were a good, loving God, he would have stepped in and kept that from taking place, because I know I wouldn't have let that take place. Well, if I'm not even a great person, but I'm good enough to know I'm not going to let that happen, and God does, then he must not be a very good guy. And they do that based on seeing evil, bad things, and then deciding if God were good, he wouldn't let that happen. So he's either not good or he's not here. But what I always am curious about is notice that they assume that good things are supposed to happen. If they won the lottery, if they met somebody and suddenly dated somebody and they become your boyfriend, girlfriend, and you're in love with them, if your parents have some wonderful thing happen, or if they get healed from something, if you get the job you want, when something great happens, many times these same people never say, oh, thank you, God, for intervening and doing this beautiful, wonderful, amazing, incredible thing for me. Yeah, you must exist because look at this great thing. Nah, I earned that. I did that. That's really on me. I'm the one that went and accomplished that. I took that test. I went to school. I got that degree. I'm the one that accomplished. I did that. It's me. But if something bad happens, God, why didn't you come in and stop the bad? And one would say, well, wait a minute. If you've made all the good in your life happen, then when the bad happens, I guess that's your fault too, right? And if it's not, then I have to ask you, then why does the good that you accomplish, why is that your accomplishment? Why would you have access to the things that you like, but the things that you don't like are out of your control? Just because you like something doesn't mean it's good, too, by the way. People think it's good to steal from somebody and to get away with it. Some people think it's good to rape and pillage and not get punished or caught. We just are watching, even today, I noticed in the news as we're taping this, that in 5 days, it's the, what do you call it? I hate it when I forget words, but when a case goes too long and nobody is convicted or nobody is put into charged with a crime, then there comes a time when it's too long and you can't do it anymore. I forgot the name of it. I know all of you will know it, and you'll type it in as soon as you hear me saying this. But there's a term for that. Anyways, that's about to end for Anthony Fauci. 5 days. He cannot be convicted of lying to Congress about the Wuhan virus that he was part of that killed, who knows how many people, and he manufactured and created. Now, nothing is going to happen to him because, Biden preemptively gave him a pardon, but more importantly, he's a progressive leftist, and they never prosecute each other because they believe they're such good people that they can kill Charlie Kirk and dance in the street and still be good. They can butcher babies, dance in the street and still be good. They can mutilate children's genitals, dance in the street and still be good. They can call a president that many people voted for Nazi, it's not true, dance in the street and consider someone's good. And they can call people who voted for somebody they didn't agree with evil, dark, bad, sexist, racist, hateful bigots. They don't have to prove it. It doesn't have to be true. It just makes them feel good about themselves. And they literally stem amongst themselves and say, aren't we the good guys? They are in control. They will be the downfall of freedom. If it ever ends in America, it will be because of them, the progressive that always wants to tear down things that got us this far. They hate the past. They hate wisdom. They hate people that have lasted thousands of years with certain perspectives and philosophies to say, here's how you should live life. Here's what we've learned after all these thousands of years. No, progress means we've decided that it's better now to do this. And it hasn't happened yet, but we're going to say that if you don't do this, why, you're on the wrong side of history. Notice this incredibly unique manipulation of reality. They say that whatever we desire is progress, and whatever happened before us is regress. And if you don't follow us into the future, you're on the wrong side of history. interestingly enough, it's in the future. Well, history has to happen, and once it happens, then it's real. Then you can evaluate and decide for yourself, was it good, healthy, and the best outcome for the most amount of people? Most of the time, progressivism by intellectual elites from the academies fails. It fails economically when they want to have central planning. It's failed every time it's ever been tried, and people have been destroyed before. The black family was destroyed because Lyndon Johnson wanted to give money to black women to have children and not be married. I mean, every idea they come up with literally is crushed and destroyed because it has a demonic Marxist idea. And I say Marxist because it is. Marxism always makes oppressor. It always has a victim and those who create, those who attack the victims. We now know that the Southern Poverty Law Center is funding groups, white supremacist groups and so forth, to try to build a case for them to get more money by saying, look, these people are out here, we're finding them. So look, please pay us more money. They are completely fraudulent hate group, and yet they go around telling who all the hate groups are. So this has all been exposed. It's not me hyperbolically ranting about my right-wing views or my Christian nationalism or anything along the line. It's a human being who sees what has actually happened and wonders, why are they indicted? And if guilty of these charges, go to prison like the rest of us have to do if we're the ones that complete the breach. Well, that's what happens when the control of the culture is controlled by evil. Evil will never, ever defeat it. Itself. It won't indict itself. It will in hell. In hell, they will all suffer together with their father, the enemy devil. But right now, they might get away with it for a while because they're in charge. But we've seen it. We've seen it over and over again that people that have done evil things, Clintons, Obama, who generated and paid money for this Russian collusion hoax against the president, all real, much worse than Watergate, where all they did was listen in. They just listened in. Wrong, breach, not good, but nothing compared to the literal, I don't want to say treason, because they weren't trying to destroy the nation with a foreign entity, but they were trying to destroy people's freedom in America to vote, to have access to actual reality of what's going on, data that we can evaluate to make conclusions as to who we should vote for. It's an offense that deserves to at least be indicted and be under judge and or jury. And if a breach, then there should be penalties. I don't know what it is. Should be jail time. I would think it's pretty bad. But if not, then at least probation or some kind of community service, something. But it won't happen. And this is the despair of those of us who do care about freedom, the ones who wouldn't wear the mask during Corona, the ones who wouldn't get the vaccine, who knew that we were being manipulated, controlled by elite, who never did what they demanded of us. They didn't get the vaccines, they faked it. They didn't wear the mask, they ate whatever they wanted, whenever they wanted, while they decided by the stroke of their pen, the rest of us don't get to eat where we choose to, and we don't even get to be next to our husband dying in a hospital or even close to each other during a funeral. The evil that took place there will never, ever, 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 ever be paid back, ever. Because this is the world we live in. Republicans aren't doing anything about it to indict, so they're in on it. They're evil, corrupt, Judas folks. Democrats have gone full-blown and demonic. They kill babies. They mutilate children. They've thrown God out of their platform. So they've got a demonic force that they literally live by. But you know what? So do Republicans. Their demonic force is that of cowardice in the spirit of Judas. That's why I had to leave them and become an independent, because I just didn't want to associate my name with their toxic cowardice. So here we sit in a world that is under deep attack. Now they're releasing files to show that all kinds of space aliens are everywhere. And it was just little dots of things shooting around. I don't see what it is. There's nothing. They don't like, if they're so smart, they can come from another universe, and their technology is so advanced that they can literally breach, whatever, light speed to come from another space that we could never have imagined. But they never land and just say, here I am, and talk to us and try to build a relationship. Colonize us. Do something. Come over and take over the world like the movies. Land and say, take us to your leader and, see. Do that. Or be nice like we always pretend that they are and say, hey, it's us. We came from here. Here's technology. You want to come check it out? They never show because they're not real. And if you ever see some kind of spaceship, it'll be a demon. Demons are real. They've been seen by people over the years, over the thousands of years. This is all happening. This is all where we're at. This is all part of the deception that will lead to the end of the times. And with my hope is that God is in fact wrapping up the world, and that we can all come to a place where finally justice is complete, and that love and peace does exist for all those who humble themselves to the great and mighty God Almighty. Folks, we have a wonderful guest on today. His name is Michael Sweet from Stryper. We're going to talk about music, being a witness in a very dark space, being a missionary in the middle of nightclubs and concerts with some devil-like worshiping, or at least their vibe was, musicians. And yet these guys would throw Bibles out during their concerts. So quite courageous men, quite courageous Christians, and really doing hard things that most of us wouldn't even consider, and talented. So that being said, I thought, what a wonderful time to talk to somebody who's actually lived the world of the backward masking and seeing where it's true, what isn't. Where do Christians belong in culture? Where don't they? And is there an answer to all the big questions? And sometimes it does through music, because music is the one thing that unites us all. You hear a song and you go, I know exactly where I was. It's beautiful, and it touches us in a way that nothing else ever can. So enjoy this interview with trailblazer and vocalist elite for the band Stryper, Michael Sweet. Well, hey, it is me, God's comic Brad Stine. Yes, the guy that started conservative comedy in Christian worldview as social commentary in America. So that makes me interesting and unique. But the guy that beat me to it did it in rock and roll. What am I talking about? You know what I'm talking about. I'm talking about Stryper. Come on, everybody remembers those guys. They came in, they saw, they conquered, and they did it in the mainstream, not in churches. And that is their legacy. They're still around, and they're getting better with age, as we all are. And guess what? One of the guys that started the whole thing, co-founder, lead singer, as well as many other things we'll be talking about that this man has done, and most importantly, a brother in Christ. Please welcome to Brad Stine Has Issues, Michael Sweet. How do you do, sir? Good to meet you, brother. How are you?
I'm doing good. Busy as all get out. I've got a lot of things going on as usual. It's just kind of how I'm built.
Yeah.
To be busy, and I wouldn't have it any other way. I'm very grateful that I've got all these opportunities and these doors that are opened, and God's good. He's doing incredible things. Has been for many years in my life.
Well, no, that's amazing. So, just as a quick sort of summary for those who might be being introduced to you for the first time, you are lead singer of Stryper, but you've also had quite a significant solo career or working with other artists as well. So I don't want to leave that by the wayside, because that needs to be discussed, especially because some of the people you've worked with are pretty significant in the rock and roll field. So I love that you are of influence. And from the get-go, you were unabashedly Christian, and that certainly doesn't always bode well in the rock and roll world. So tell me a little bit about how you without a deep necessarily narrative, but kind of, were you always a believer, or is that something that happened after you'd already got in the business, and how you decided to make that the forefront of your perspective in a world that doesn't seem to be usually embracing Christianity? So how did that all come about?
Well, oddly or interestingly enough, whichever word you want to choose, we got saved, my family, through Jimmy Swaggart Ministries. And basically, we sat down in front of a television and accepted Christ. We repeated the sinner's prayer, and then we got involved a Southern Baptist church locally. I started playing on the music group, and we were a very musical family. This is when I was 12 and 13. And then I kind of fell out of church. I was not interested in going to church. By the time I reached the age of 14, 15, I started getting into the Hollywood club scene because we lived out in California. And became a house band at a club called Gazzari's. And we played often at another club called the Whiskey A Go-Go, which everybody knows about. And we just built a bit of a career, musically speaking, there on the Strip. And then we rededicated our lives. I rededicated my life at the age of 20. I'm kind of putting it all, it's condensed in I'm shortening the version. Rededicated my life at 20, and that's when we became Stryper, and there's been no looking back ever since. And I'm going to be 40 years old in a few months.
Oh, wow. Well,
I'm kidding.
I know.
I'll be
Well,
63.
I know. Well, we actually have some 7 degrees of separation. This probably will be the first time, for whatever reason, this topic would come up. Not that it matters, but it just happens to fit. Is my wife of 33 years actually used to date many years ago, before her life changed, the drummer of Dokken. So Mick Brown was his name. You probably know him if you know Dokken or knew them. You certainly know George Lynch. And so she dated him and was with him for many years. She was actually in one of their music videos. It's Not Love, I think it was called, or something to that effect. Anyways, but so she was in the whole whiskey world as well. I guess it would have been the 80s, and was part of that whole scene too. So it's rare that I would have a connection. I was not into that world at all. I grew up as a Christian for the most part, was not a big rock and roll guy. I liked music, but it just wasn't my scene, so to speak. I was more an athlete and had other things that interested me. But anyways, when I noticed that you also had been involved in George Lynch, and I know she certainly knew George, that she... I just found that interesting that there's something in common with us, even though we just met. But what a great story that you have. And I guess I'm curious about this because, Michael, I'm a comic and I've been a comedian for, over 30 years. I started out in the comedy clubs. So I did all the clubs in LA, the Improv and Comedy Store, but also traveled throughout the nation. But I was a Christian too. So it reflected the way I did comedy, only in that I didn't curse, I didn't do sexual jokes. But what I wanted to be was funny. And that's hard. It's hard to be a professional comedian, and especially in nightclubs, comedy clubs, because as opposed to the church world, you actually have to be competent to work in a comedy club, because if you're not, you're fired. So you have to be funny. So, but see, I always believed this. Sometimes your witness is your craft. Sometimes the best means to demonstrate Christ is being really good at the gifts he's given you without compromising your worldview. Well, I was in comedy clubs. So yeah, there's plenty of drinking. There's plenty of, language and hedonistic worldview. It's comedy, right? But I don't think it holds a candle to rock and roll. I think they are the champions of sex, drugs, and rock and roll. So here you were in that world, I guess as a nominal or backslidden believer. Suddenly you're in the middle of that. Certainly you were influenced in that regard some way or the other. And suddenly you return. Meanwhile, you're still there. I'm still amongst these folks. And in no way did you ever think, well, I guess I need to leave. You said, no, this is my world. I'm just going to redefine what it means to be a rock and roll performer, performance artist, without compromising a faith that does seem antithetical to the world you believe in. Now, you're crucial. You're a missionary to those folks. But certainly that had to come with some ramifications and some challenges. When you returned your faith and then began to discuss that amongst those who were sitting there drinking their Jack Daniels with 5 girls on the side going, well, what's going on? So how did you even integrate this new spiritual world of yours amongst your peers and not lose their, I don't know, camaraderie or their friendship or their even respect?
Well, I think there's a lot of answers to that question. To start with, we're their friends. In other words, Steve and Piercy, for example, the singer for Rat, they were a house band at Gazzari's when we were. We were called Rock's Regime. They were called Mickey Rat. And we used to hang out and talk and hit it off. I bought one of his guitars, and we still cross paths today. And when we see each other, we give each other a hug and talk about the old times. And we're friends. We have a lot of history together. Just because I became a Christian doesn't mean that I need to close the door on our friendship. So that's the first thing. And I think our peers, the people that aren't believers, who see us praying before a show or reading the Bible or whatever it is that a believer does, they respect it. At least it feels that way, because we're still just who we are. I mean, we sit there and laugh with them and hang out with them, and we'll watch Spinal Tap with them, and we'll do this and go eat with them and, enjoy life and break bread and have fun together. But at the same time, they know where we stand. They know that we're very serious about our faith. They know that there's no compromise there. And, I think they respect that. And like I said, I love these guys. That's why I play in a band with George Lynch. I love George. He's an atheist.
Yeah.
Oddly enough, George was a Christian at one time. He went door to door. This is coming right from his own mouth. He went door to door and handed out tracts and Bibles and played on the worship team and did all that stuff. But he had some heartache and heartbreak in his life. And then for whatever other reasons, he went the opposite way. And he's an atheist now. But I'm in a band with them, polar opposites. But we respect each other.
Yeah.
I don't hound him about his disbelief, and he doesn't hound me about my belief. Well, he kind of pokes jabs at me in a joking way, but we love each other and we're friends and we respect each other. So that's how it works in my life. And some Christians don't understand that. They really hold tight to the scriptures about, they talk about being unequally yoked and, doing this or not doing that. I just have a different view than a lot of believers. I hang out with a lot of these guys that are not believers, and I'm comfortable with that.
Yeah. Well, and I think that as a fellow performance artist, even though I'm in a different genre, a field, I think if there's one thing that artists really respond to, it's authenticity, that you're not fake. Whatever the genre of art that you've chosen, that you're serious about it. You want to be as good as you can at it, but that it isn't a manipulation. This is really who I am. This is really what I believe. And it's going to reveal itself in jokes, in lyrics, in music, in talent. That's who I am. And that authenticity artists are drawn to. We like people who are passionate about something, even if it's not something we're interested in. That doesn't mean that passion can't be misguided. You can be passionate about drugs and it kills you. But you can also use it in the best realm, and that is to influence and inspire people with maybe the most powerful communication device God ever gave humans, music. I think it's the one thing that is the most emotionally, psychologically compelling and influential because, and I've made this kind of observation before, but if somebody came and see my show and they happen to like what I do and they laugh, I'm grateful. That's what I'm here for. But a joke kind of comes and goes. Once you know the surprise, the punchline, it's still funny, but you can't keep doing it 50 times in a row, you kind of lost the punch
Right.
that you didn't see them.
Yeah.
Music, on the other hand, you can play, and I'm sure you have, the same song for 40 years. You're sick of it. Nobody knows that. they don't know that.
Yeah.
They figured you're loving it. And it does, and I don't mean sick of it as in you don't respect it, but you get tired of it. That passion, that beautiful creative process that gave it to you in the first place when it was fun to present that,
Yep.
and people responded, that wanes, because I've done it so many times. You'll still give it and deliver it with passion because you know the people love it, but you don't have the same connection emotionally to it. You can be playing that thing and ripping it out in your head. You're going, yeah, after the game, after this show, I got to go do some laundry. Or, you can be in your own head. I'm sure you've had that experience, but music stands the test of time. You can hear a song and go, I remember exactly where I was the first time I heard that song. I was in my car. I was driving to school. My girlfriend was about to break up. You'll never forget that. That's not like a joke. Nobody says, honey, they're playing my joke, but they certainly will say they're playing my
Right.
song. So tell me what you think as an expert in music who's proven his worth in not only creating music and distributing it amongst folks, but then as a spiritual man, a man of Christ, a man of the Heavenly Father who gave us the ability to communicate through music. Lucifer was a singer, so it's a big deal to do music. What do you think music is in the human experience? What does it bring to the table that other things like acting, or I don't even know what other, comedy, magicians, I don't know. They all have the place but what is it about music and songs that seem to be unique when it comes to the performance arts? What's your perspective?
It's, to me, in my opinion, again, whether it matters or not, it's more of an emotional bond that we all have. Music, there's nothing like putting on a song and closing your eyes that moves you. You just hear the violin, or you hear a guitar, or you hear a voice. It just makes you go, wow, listen to that. And it moves you emotionally to the core. And then you add to that the lyrical content, lyrics that move you, lyrics that inspire you, that encourage you. So you add the two together, and it's a really unique experience to be moved or changed by a song. I mean, there are a lot of people I've met that have shared their stories with me who have been suicidal. One guy not long ago, last year, came to a show and he shared the story with it. He was sitting in his truck near a ledge, and he was going to drive his truck off. And he was done with life. He was suicidal. This is back in the 80s. And he was listening. He had the radio down low, and one of our songs came on, a song called Soldiers Under Command. And he loves hard rock metal. He turned it up and was listening and listening and listening. And that song by itself turned his life around.
Wow.
He turned the car around, went home, and is a pastor now. Completely changed, altered his life, just one song. So that's the power of music. That is the power of music. And God created music. And I think it's something that brings us all together. We all love music. It might be a different style, different genre, but we all love music. And it really does bring us together. It's a common bond that we all share. And I think that's because God created it and, made it beautiful and purposely made it so. So music's a powerful tool. Life-changing.
Well, indeed. Do you believe? See, I believe that all truth is God's truth, which means that even an atheist can speak things that have a connection to God, because if it's true, it still comes from the essence of God. So just because he doesn't acknowledge it and doesn't acknowledge, the creator, doesn't make it less powerful. And I wonder to myself, without getting into the weeds on this, because I think there can be some paranoia that Christians over the years have placed upon music. Oh, that's the devil's music. I remember I have a whole joke. It doesn't work as much anymore because they don't make records anymore. But I had a joke about backward masking back in the day because of, I remember being taught in church, get rid of that album, burn that album, break that album because it's backwards, it's satanic or whatever. That never made sense to me. It's like, how is my subconscious hearing something that's backwards and knowing it's there and playing it front? It didn't make any sense. But so I think there's times when Christians historically have looked like idiots when it came to the way they describe music. But by the same token, and again, I'm looking at you as an expert, as the doctorate in representing music, because you've made a living doing just that. But there must be a spiritual realm connected to music, and that can also be evil. So do you see, or have you ever experienced or felt, though, that there can be demonic influences utilizing or hijacking music to use it towards the evil as opposed to the good? Do you think that can be legit, or do you think it's usually just the lyrics speak for themselves and that's really the extent of it? Or do you think there's a deeper realm that we don't understand sometimes, and maybe there's music we should avoid, I guess?
I think I'll go even further and say that I think you'll know it. Most people will know it. Certainly those who are tuned into God, those who are committed to God will know it when they hear an evil song or when they hear a holy song. I do. Mm. When I hear a song that's like, wait a minute, I might not even hear the lyric, and I just hear the music. I'm like, yeah, no, turn that off. No. Same thing with the movie. Mm. When you watch a movie that's inherently evil, and you're like, there's a feeling you get like, no, turn that off. I don't want to see that.
Yeah.
So I think our spirit knows, especially when we have Christ in our heart.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I'll say this too, and this might ruffle feathers, and I don't say it to ruffle feathers. There are Christian songs that I hear that sound the complete opposite of being godly and Christian. And there are mainstream songs that I hear that sound more anointed than many Christian songs. So that backs up what you said, everything you said. I think God can use anything and anyone.
Yeah.
And some of these mainstream songs have God's fingerprints all over them. And flip of the coin, some of these Christian songs, so I'll let everyone else go out and find which songs those are. I won't name names or anything, but, I think everyone can figure that out.
Do you think that there is such a thing? And I'm not trying to kind of, I don't know, I'm being a little bit abstract. I just find it interesting. And again, you're an expert in this field, so I just wanted your perspective. But there was a time, I think it was in the Middle Ages, there was a particular, I believe, a chord that was considered demonic or something. It might have been a minor or a diminished, I don't remember. I'm not an expert in that. But do you think there can be melodic sounds that are more nefarious, or is that just our own person? Or is there something innate in music that's, like you said, you hear it and you go, I don't like that feel, right? Something is off. Or do you think it has to be more lyrically profound for you to draw that conclusion?
No, I think you can find that in the music itself. There's been music I've heard that, started, I'm like, oh, that's, and it's not necessarily a chord structure or a minor versus a major chord. I've heard that. I believe it's D minor, and I could be wrong about that. But, and I hope that's not true, that D minor is inherently evil, because I use D minor all the time. I'm in big trouble if that's true. I think minor chords versus major chords, or the beat, you hear about a lot of churches and pastors preach about the beat can be evil and this and that. And it's like, I don't buy into any of that stuff. I really don't. I think it's more so it comes from a spiritual battle. If someone who's writing a song and they're having a seance and, you know, they're praying to Satan while they're doing it,
Right.
versus someone that's writing the song and they're pulling it from the Bible and they're praying to God while they're doing it. I think you're going to feel those connections in that song.
Yeah.
But
Well,
maybe I'm weird for thinking that, but that's what I think.
no, but I think it's self-explanatory, because if you look at those who score films, and if you're scoring a horror film or a dramatic film, there's particular melodic structures or chordal tones that clearly are menacing. You hear it and you go, it's like, ooh, Jaws or something. I'm trying to think off the head. Something tells you just by that melodic vibration that there's something to be fearful here. And it's, nobody teaches you that. You just instinctively sense that something's off. This is something to be leery of, I guess. And so that's why I just wondered if you ever felt like there were any chords or musical melodic structures that you would avoid, because by the same token, maybe you want to tell us a spiritual song that has some trepidation in it. Maybe you're trying to tell that story. You know, Psalms, the book of Psalms, one thing I love about it is once in a while, Michael, it doesn't resolve. Yeah. And I'm so grateful for that, because I'm an actor too. So in a lot of faith-based films and a lot of storytelling, when it comes to Christians, they always feel it's a necessity to have the happy ending. The field goal always makes it. The cancer always disappears. The marriage is always restored. And that's a nice story. But Michael, the reality of humanity is sometimes it doesn't resolve. Sometimes the kid dies. Sometimes the marriage fails. Sometimes the jail sentence is carried out. Sometimes the murder happens. And as much as we hate and despise that, that's part of the human experience and the fallen nature of what it means to be human. And we need to know what that means. We need to know why Christ died. Redemption is to take on the evil and overcome it, even if it's in another life, even if we don't get to see it now. And so I find that even coming back to the melodic structures that we were exploring, is you can tell immediately if a song doesn't resolve. You can't go, you know, if it's D, G, E or whatever, it's got that finish that allows you to finish it. And if you stay a note behind and never resolve it, it feels icky, like finish it, fix it, ouch. So there's something in our spirit that demands you melodically finish the story, even if it's done with just music. So I don't know what I'm saying, other than I just wanted to get your expert thoughts about that. And if you've ever written a song maybe that you think fits that a little bit, that's a little bit less on the nose, that leaves some for interpretation.
I write a lot of songs that are pulled and taken from Revelation, book of Revelation, because it's very fitting for our sound and our style. We're a metal band. I would describe us as a metal band, more so. We do ballads on occasion and songs that are a little poppier with a little more of a pop sense, but for the most part, we're a metal band. So to me, when I think of metal, I think of the book of Revelation. I don't know why, I just do. And when you read the book of Revelation, it's scary. There's some scary stuff in there. Some frightening stuff. And when you think of it, when you visualize it as you're reading, and you think of the vision and the imagery behind the words in the story, it's very scary. So I've pulled a lot from that. And those songs just musically sound kind of scary. Like, whoa, what's this? In the minor chord of da-da, 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 that, you know, half step chord change, like in Jaws, da 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 da. You know, it's just a half step there, but it's scary. And it kind of makes you squirm in your seat a little bit. Some of our songs are like that, and musically speaking, and the lyric comes in, and it's like, okay, wow, this is right out of scripture. and it just kind of brings it all together. But I'm just a firm believer in, with what I do and what we do as a band, that we take everything to God before we do it. When we write a song, when we record an album, when we tour, whatever it is, prayer goes into it. We always console God, because he's like God is the fifth member of this band. Always has been. Always has been. And I tell you what, man, that's so important for a band like us to do that. It means everything. And I know I can feel when we don't do it. Things don't seem to go quite right or as smoothly or whatever. So it's very important for us to do that. But I tell you what, look, we're four long-haired nobodies. I always say this, nobodies. I don't know why God chose us to be Stryper, and why God chose Stryper to break new ground and open doors back in 83 and 84. I have no idea. I really don't. Were we qualified? No, absolutely not. But we were willing. And I think God honored that. And he took that willingness, and we had hearts like children. And we're just like, God, do with us whatever you want to do. And that was the mentality. And God took that and ran with it.
Well, how do you feel that you were able, though, to not be immediately dismissed and ostracized? I mean, you're throwing, I don't know if you did this from the get-go, but you would throw Bibles out. And I mean, it was so blatantly Christian.
Yep.
And you're in the whiskey, or you're in Gazzari's, or wherever else that is rock and roll, smells like urine and beer and vomit and whatnot, clubs. And so I'm just kind of befuddled, grateful, but befuddled and curious about the secret sauce that you guys were able to kind of jump into that from the get-go unapologetically, and not be just immediately said, no, we're not hired. What the heck? No, thank you. Or this isn't what we were signing up for. And do you even think it would be more difficult, let's say, to start from scratch in those clubs now as a blatant Christian band? Or do you think it was just the timing? Or are there even other bands that followed you that are as committed to their faith, that got inspiration from you, and also are kind of in the same boat? You guys are pretty much the most hardcore Christian bands, because of the places you were able to be participants in. And it just shocks me that somebody wouldn't have just said, I'm not hiring you. We don't want this religious thing. So
well, we get that all the time. We're told no all the time when we want to get on our calling isn't to go to the church, isn't to perform. We do perform in churches on occasion, but for the most part, we've played in clubs, in theaters, in arenas, and festivals with mainstream bands. We'll go and do a festival with Judas Priest and Motley Crue and Kiss, you name it. That's what we do.
Yeah.
And then we've got people who get on us for doing that, who say, how can you do that and call yourself a Christian? And then our answer always is, well, how can we not do that and call ourselves Christians?
Right.
Because we go and do church tour year after year after year. We're just preaching to the choir.
That's right.
For the most part. And that's great. The bands that do that, it's great. That's not our calling. That's not what we're here to do. It's not what we're led to do. So we go out there and go into the clubs, Whiskey A Go-Go. I think we're playing there this year. And, that's where we're called to be. And we deliver the message. Through the lyrics, we toss Bibles out in between songs. If I feel that, I'll pray with the crowd. It's not every night, but, it's so interesting how God moves in that situation, and how he is there in that situation. But a lot of Christians believe that's impossible. And they won't come to a show like that. They literally boycott it to some degree and say, no, we won't do it. And I'm just thinking, I feel that should be every Christian's calling.
Of course.
To go into the club, to go into these places and preach the word. Yeah, why wouldn't you want to do that?
Well, yeah, well, and because it takes courage, and most Christians in America are superficial and cowardly, and probably not even believers, frankly. We were never called to be a Christian. We were called to be a disciple. That's what we were called to be. That's a much harder mission than a Christian, because a Christian, basically, I don't do anything. Jesus does everything. He does all the hard, heavy lifting. I simply say, yes, I receive. But then he says, now I need you to be disciplined. Now I need you to sacrifice yourself. Now I need you to go out on a limb. Now I need you to do what I've asked of you, and to be, uh, more importantly, hearing where I send you and then going, which is what you did. But let's be very clear for my people listening or watching this right now, if you're Christians who might have been one of those who said, I'm not, this Stryper guys, they shouldn't be amongst this alcohol and this sex stuff that's going on in these. And I'm saying to you, okay, so do you have a problem with a missionary going to South America where the women walk around topless, and maybe they, I don't know, go and attack their enemies, and maybe they're, cut their hearts out like the mines? I don't know. My point is, there's some evil, or there's some very secular, hedonistic, false philosophies and religions in other cultures that you believe a Christian should go missionary for. You don't, not only do you not think twice about it, you expect it. So here's a Michael Sweet saying, well, guess what? Guess where my mission field is? Guess where my headhunters hang out that I go talk to? They're in this club. Did you ever know Arthur Blessitt by any chance? Do you know that name?
Yeah, Arthur Blessitt. When I was basically, for lack of a better word or term, backslidden. I personally don't like that term, but that's what I'm going to use. When I was backslidden back in 1980, 79, 80, 81, around that time, before I rededicated my life in 83, at the age of 20, I used to, Arthur Blessitt and his people used to come up to me. They would be walking the streets of Sunset and Santa Monica Boulevard, and they would walk by me. You'd see them walking down with a big cross, and they're talking to people, and they would stop and talk to me on occasion. And I would basically just sit and listen to them and kind of nod my head. I was always respectful, but I didn't ever do what they asked, which was say the sinner's prayer, rededicate my life, take the literature that they were giving, getting involved in the church. I didn't never follow through with that. And I remember as they were talking to me thinking, I know all this. Mm-hmm. And God was sitting there, knocking on my heart. And I was saying to myself, they're right. They're right. But here I am standing here smoking cigarettes and drinking Jack and Coke at the age of, 18, in front of Gazaris, loving the lifestyle, living in the world, and real thinking to myself, though, this is wrong. This is wrong. But eventually that came around full circle. And Arthur Blessitt and his people were definitely a part of that, for sure. Yeah. So I'm very familiar with Arthur Blessitt.
Yeah.
And that
Arthur was a friend of mine. I wrote a book years ago called Being a Christian Without Being an Idiot. And I told his story because he used to do Sunset, like you said. I mean, his whole ministry with the cross started on a little church he had there on Sunset, where he pulled that cross off of his room and started walking up and down. And then on Christmas Day in 69 is when he decided to walk across the country. And then he ended up walking around the world. But he told the story of going into the strip club there, and it's an amazing story. But the guy that managed that club was called Ron Bozart, and he I'm not going to go in the whole story, but ultimately this guy Ron Bozart, who ran the strip club, I think one of the first strip clubs, all nude or whatever, and Sunset, becomes a believer and becomes a pastor. Oh, wow. And a pastor. He was a pastor. He ended up, amazing. And it was from Arthur, who got kicked out of Baptist seminary because he'd go into nightclubs and bars to witness. And then, well, you got to
Yeah.
get out of here. And he's like, I thought that's what we were supposed to do. And so,
Exactly.
so I just love that. And I just figured if you were in that scene, you had to
Yeah.
have known Arthur. And I don't know if you ever got to know him outside of that. He was the only guy, one of the only guys I've ever met that in his presence, you felt like this is what it had to be like to be amongst an apostle or something. There was something
Yeah.
about him that was different that I'm going, holy smoke, I want to be like that guy. But anyways, that's why I was curious about it. But I guess, you know, one of the things that I think it's important for Christians who are listening right now or watching to understand is this. You said that you were allowed into these clubs, obviously, because you've been doing all these years. There were some that said no. You never compromised as far as your commitment to your faith. The lyrics spoke for themselves, certainly throwing out Bibles, I mean, for crying out loud. So, I mean, it's as blatant. If you were looking to get yourself kicked off a tour, you were doing, and you didn't. Now, there's only two reasons that is possible. The first is the obvious. God decided to intervene and give you favor. Obviously, there's always a spiritual realm to this whole thing. But let's just be perfectly honest with you, Michael. The only reason you were still doing that is because you were good at what you did. You gave them quality music. You showed you had the goods, and that can't be ignored. I remember Steve Martin, the comic, said that once. Get so good they can't ignore you. Yep. And you did. You couldn't have maintained this status and this influence and these connections this many years if you weren't bringing the music, if you weren't bringing the quality, and that the audience said, I'm in. They either have to say yes or no. If they said no, you weren't working. So the proof's in the pudding. You gave them what they wanted, and that was all that was necessary. You allowed your craft to be your witness first to get your foot in the door. So I'm going to let you comment on that, if that makes sense, or if there's anything you'd want to add to that perspective.
No, absolutely. It makes perfect sense. And God has given us all abilities. And in speaking for myself, I think God gave me something. I don't even know why, or it's hard to explain. But there's a constant, undying song in my head. In other words, if I go to the market, I've got a song in my head. If I go to church, I've got a song in my head. If I go to the doctor's office, I got a song in my head, and I'm literally recording little melody pieces on my phone constantly. So I've got like hundreds and hundreds of them, and it's a blessing and a curse. So the blessing is that God gave me that ability, but the curse is that it's hard to focus on much of anything else, and that's partly because I'm ADHD, or at least I was diagnosed having that a few years back. But, I'm very, very thankful for the gifts that God's given me. And I strive to make our music the best it can be, make it sound the best it can be sonically. It's really important for me to give my all and devote, everything I have to every song and every album and every tour. It's very important because I always view it as God should, you should represent God to the fullest and to the best of your ability. He deserves it. And it should be the best. And now, are we the best? I'm not saying that, but we sure try to be. And I think, as you said, you touched on it a bit, I think the record shows, the history shows that we've been able to sustain, and we're still here. We're celebrating this year. We're talking about 42 years. Since our first album came out in 84, since we formed, almost 43 years. So it's pretty insane. Yeah. But God is good and done a lot of great things through the band, and we're still here doing it. Incredible.
Well, and there's something else I want people to know about you, because I did a little cursory research just in case there was something I didn't know. I don't follow your type of music like all the time, and that's not against you. I mean, in general, I'm not a huge music guy, but I have things I like. So I wanted to make sure I didn't miss anything. But and then I came across this tidbit that you were at one point for a season toured with Boston, and were the lead singer. Well, now I'm a little bit older than you, so I grew up as a teenager in the 70s. So I'm very aware of Boston, and they killed. I mean, their songs, More Than a Feeling in Foreplay. I mean, talk about classic standards that absolutely killed it. And then they ask you to fill in that space to be that lead singer for that band. So, buddy, if anything needs to establish your chops and your vocals, there it is. So, can you tell me a little bit about what that was all about? Was that kind of I would think it would be similar to Vince Gill with the Eagles. You're joining a band like that, you're going, okay, either I've been waiting, or oh my gosh,
Well,
am I going to be able to handle this? Because this is some serious shoes to fill.
oh yeah, no question about it. I mean, the way that came about is Brad Delp passed away tragically, and I was a huge Boston fan. That was the first album I ever bought. I was 13 years old, 1976, and I went out with my own money and I bought that album, and it really changed my life as a young musician in every way. I'm a guitar player, I'm a singer, and I'm a writer and a producer. So in all those ways, those four ways, it really moved me and made me want to be better at all four. And that was one of the most influential and inspirational albums I've ever bought and listened to. You fast forward to 2007 and Brad passed, and I wrote something about what he meant to me as a singer. I put him in my top 3 of all time. And the Boston camp was touched by it, and they reached out to me and asked me to come and sing at what was going to be their last show. They had Sammy Hagar, Mickey Thomas, Ann Wilson, a bunch of other singers, and they invited me. And I thought, well, what am I going to do? And what happened was, long story short, a lot of the other singers dropped out, and then they asked me to sing more songs. So I went and I played. I learned all the guitar parts. We had 3-part harmony going on, which Tom loved, Tom Scholes. And then I sang More Than a Feeling, Peace of Mind, Rock and Roll Band, all these songs to a Boston crowd in Boston. And so you can imagine how nervous I was. It was probably the most nervous I've ever been for any show. But the more I thought about what we were there to do was to celebrate Brad and his life and his talent and his voice and all that, it calmed my nerves a little bit. So I went and performed with them. It was going to be their last show. They came back after the show. They loved it so much, they decided to tour, and they asked me to join the band. And I toured with them in 2008. My wife had cancer at the time. I was her caretaker. And I toured with them 56 shows. And the only reason why I did it is because my wife really encouraged me to do it and pushed me to do it, even though she was sick with cancer. And I just felt like, how can this even happen? This isn't reality. There's no way this can happen. Me being gone and her being home. My daughter stepped up, took care of mom. Some other people came in, took care of her. I would fly home and see her on occasion. She would fly out and see me on occasion. So it worked out. And I look back on that now and I realize what God was doing in all of that. I think Tom was there to help me heal, and I was there to help Tom heal because of Brad's passing.
And I believe, not to get morbid, but I think he committed suicide, if I remember. So that's a hard one to overcome, because you feel like A, he's dead, but B, I'm guessing you feel responsible. Like, why wasn't I there? What did I miss? Something I should have intervened. Well, you can't help somebody that's got a mental illness or depression or whatever. So it's not necessarily fun, but I'm sure there was an added sense from Tom, who would have felt like, could I have done more? It seems like there's a lot of guilt for people who have experienced the loss of somebody through suicide.
Oh yeah, no question about it. No question about it. And that was kind of the spirit on the whole tour. You know, as we would step out on stage, it was bittersweet. It was happy, but it was sad. it was just a very, very unique and interesting situation. But I was there to be there for whatever reason. I felt like God wanted me there. And I got to talk quite a few times to Tom about God. And I wore my shirts with scripture on them. And, it was really cool. I got to be a witness and an example on Boston tour every night on stage. It was really cool. So yeah, that was amazing. And then in terms of vocally or talent wise, any other guy in this world could have done that. I mean, there's so many guys that can do it.
Wait a minute. Anybody in this
Well,
could have done Delp's vocals? You got to be kidding me. That guy, I mean, come on, man. He had pipes.
what I mean by that is there's a lot of guys on YouTube, people that are ridiculously talented, great singers, great guitar players singing more than a feeling. It's like, wow, they're nailing it,
Yeah.
And, I maybe that's a little bit of a stretch to say anyone could have done it, but I mean, there's probably quite a few other people that could have done it. And for whatever reason, they chose me, and I still kind of scratch my head on that. But hey, I was there for a season, connect the dots, and that's one of the dots that helped connect to everything else.
Well, and what an amazing memory that had to be to have been able to be part of a band that was so iconic. Not to mention they influenced you, so it had to be surreal for you to be on stage, look around, and go, "How did I get here? This is crazy." 13-year-old kid bought an album, said, "And now it's me." How did this? Well, of course, God, but still. We're still humans and are overwhelmed by some of the things that happens to us, right? And then you ended up with George Lynch, and with him, you said he's an atheist now. I don't know, is he still married to Christy?
He is not.
Okay, I just wondered because
as far as I'm trying to think of his wife's name right now.
Okay,
he is not married to Christy.
Okay, well, Christy, she was Christy Lynch was like one of my wife's best friends at the time when he was with Doc. And so I just was curious. That's the only connection I have to them. But anyways, so you
He is not.
Okay. And so you're still doing stuff with him. What was it about that relationship that you felt made sense? Especially because he's known for his guitar work and that's what you do. So how did that fit?
Well, the way it worked for me, it's very simple. I pray about every project I do. And if I feel led to do it, I'll do it. But also add to that, the icing on the cake is the lyrical content. If the lyrical content isn't right, I won't do it. And there was a project called Sunbomb I did, Tracy Guns of LA Guns. And the first lyric I got, someone else wrote the lyrics and they sent it to me and they said, here you go. And I contacted the label. I said, I'm not singing this. That's not me. I won't do it. It was about burning witches.
Oh.
And I said, no. So, I say no to a project and I'll put my foot down and say, no, I'm not singing that if I need to. So that's how that worked out with George. Basically, I wrote the lyrics. He wrote the music. Okay. And it worked out. Oh, yeah.
So you rewrote the lyrics, like he allowed you to basically redo the whole thing.
Well, that was the project I was talking about that needed to be rewritten was Sunbomb.
Oh, I see. Okay.
And someone else rewrote the lyrics, and I said, look, they got to have this, and that. And they rewrote them, and I approved everything and tweaked everything. And as they came in, I would rewrite words or lines here and there. But with Sweet and Lynch, I wrote the lyrics, and he wrote the music. And I just wrote about what I wanted to write about, still being, directing everything to God, but doing it in a little bit more of a subtle approach, but it's still nonetheless powerful and all the same.
I noticed, and I hope it's not misinformation or been altered, because I wanted to lift up an album that looks like you have coming out in April, The Master Plan, a worship album. So I guess that's a solo album, I'm guessing, unless it's with Stryper. I think it's just you. So
it's solo. Yeah, this will be my 11th solo album.
Okay.
Stryper, we're working right now on a new Stryper album, and that's going to be our 18th Stryper album. So we got a lot of stuff going on,
Yeah, no kidding. Well, so I wanted to kind of delve a little bit into that, because it said the press release was it was a worship album. So I guess I wanted to talk to you a second about Christian music, but more importantly, praise and worship and lyrics.
Yep.
So the first time I ever heard contemporary Christian music was in probably 1979, 80, with a guy named John Wimber, who started a church called the Vineyard. And he was very well known. Matter of fact, he used to be keyboardist for like the Righteous Brothers or something. So another guy that came out of that world. But when I first came across it, I came out of a very conservative church where they did hymns and whatever. And when I first heard it, now this is 80s, so we're like Keith Green eras and second chapter of Acts eras and so forth.
Randy Stone,
yeah.
Comfort. Oh yeah.
Yeah. And but I'd never heard it. I'd only heard hymns in church with a hymnal. And I was really moved by it. I was like, wow, they're singing songs and using more modern nomenclature instead of this archaic stuff from the 1800s. And I loved it because I just felt kind of personal and connected, because it sounded similar to music that I had heard, pop music. But over the years, and I live in Nashville now, so obviously I've come across a couple fairly decent musicians and so forth, people you probably would know and so forth. But the more I've been around, especially faith-based guys who are still got the chops, I've heard this more than once, probably mainly from producers or studio guys, about how weak a lot of praise and worship is lyrically, how superficial, childish, deep. And after a while, especially because they'll repeat the same line over and over again, it does seem a little lack sophistication. And I returned to some hymns, and I got to tell you something, buddy.
Yeah.
Holy crap.
Yeah.
The guys that wrote hymns, what they packed into one line is like, how did you guys do that? So I kind of wanted to get your take on that as a lyricist, as a melodist, I don't even know, melodiician, player, singer. Can you differentiate? Can you untangle the sophisticated depth of what hymns brought to the table in their lyrical content that was so concise and deep compared to what we see now? I mean, do you see that? Do you get kind of frustrated with what passes for Christian worship of God compared to what used to happen?
I do, absolutely. And oddly enough, I made an album called Hymn, H-I-M, and it's a retake on old hymns. So I changed the melodies and the arrangements, but used the same lyrics, right? And because some of those old hymns are the most powerful songs and lyrics that you'll ever see. I agree with you on that. And this new album I have is called The Master Plan, and it's my take on a worship album. I'm calling it an inspirational album because I'm kind of burnt out on the worship tag. And what I mean by that is there are so many worship artists and worship albums that come out, and not all, but most, to my ears, kind of sound the same. It's like the same format, the same doom, 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 kick drum going, the chord changes with the U2 delay on it, and then repeating the same line over and over and over again, And it's cool. There's some great songs that come from that, but oh my word, there are so many songs that are just so stale and kind of repetitive and the same old. And I wanted to do the opposite with my inspirational / worship album, and I did. It's an eclectic mix. Every song is different. It's pulling more from my 70s and 80s musical roots. There's a song in there that's got a little bit of an Eagles vibe to it, a song that has a little bit of a spiral staircase vibe, a song that has a little bit of a Motown vibe. You know, there's just so much going on. But that's what I love to do, and
Yeah.
it's an album that's unlike any other worship album, and sadly, the CCM world probably won't understand it because of that, because they do kind of stay in a box and, you know, one dimensional, my opinion. But yeah, I love to mix it up and try different things. And I'm not a believer in the cookie cutter, replicated over and over again format that Nashville tends to do a lot with Christian music and with country music.
Yeah.
Country music may be even worse. You know, I love doing different things and experimenting and trying to be unique and original instead of copying someone. I like to lead someone and be a leader instead of a follower. So that's just my take on it.
Well, and I wonder too if there was a different emphasis on the reason we sing praise and worship. If you looked at a hymn, and again, I started in that little world of the hymnal in front of the, you know, the pew, and you pull it out and go to page 41 and whatever. And everybody sang it, and it was usually an organ or maybe a piano. That was it. So it was very simple. But my point was the emphasis was on the lyrics. We're not here to do a group performance. We're here to sing to God Almighty. And I think that with modern music and so forth, I think it's, and I'm not saying there's something inherently wrong with the musicianship being at the highest quality, but I think that that when you get something a little bit more contemporary, it can cause you to almost feel like it's a performance, than a moment of sacred space.
Right.
And yeah, so I just wonder if inherent in this type of in what praise and worship has evolved into, we've lost that sacred, I wanted to say stillness, which doesn't make sense because you're singing, but there was a sense that we are all singing this thing and that was very focused as what these lyrics are trying to get at, whereas the music can overshadow that and it becomes a concert, so to speak. So how do you overcome that? I mean, I'm guessing this is your world master plan. You said it's going to be contemporary, but I don't think you wrote it to go have people do it necessarily in churches. Maybe there's a song they could use, but it sounds to me like you did that to uplift the body. They get to listen and be moved by it. Am I right?
Yeah, I did it. I wrote it during COVID. And everybody was locked in their houses, and we weren't touring at the time, and everyone else was doing covers of other bands and posting videos online, you know, remotely, which was cool. And I started writing an album, and my approach and my thought and what God was moving me to do was to make an album that would do just that, inspire people. That's why I call it an inspirational album. I felt like we were in dark times. Hopelessness, being hopeful was turning into being, you know, not having hope. Like hope was just fading. People were like, I was talking to people and they were like, gosh, you could hear the depression and the oppression. And I wanted to make an album that would help people through that. Right. Well, it never got released during that time. Good thing. And it just kind of got put on a shelf, and I was busy with Stryper and other projects and whatnot. Finally, I had the opportunity to release it, and it's coming out in April, called The Master Plan, and it's really an album to heal. That's all it is. You put this album on after, if you go to a loud show and you're driving home in your car, this is the album you want to put on. When you want to you're on a dark road driving for an hour, you want to just chill out and be inspired and, you know, be encouraged, be uplifted. That's what this album is.
Yes.
There's a song on there called Again about losing people, losing someone close to you, and how we'll see them again. You know, every song's different lyrically.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I would be excited to hear that. How does that? I don't even know anymore. How do these come out? They don't. I mean, I'm so old school. I still call my comedy stuff albums, but you know, they're downloads now and streaming, whatever. So, how will somebody get a hold of the master plan when it releases? I guess April 26th. Is that still the release date?
I earlier than that. I could be wrong. I think it's the first week in April,
Oh,
but you might be right on that date. I'm
I'm just
sure.
going by, I think, Wikipedia. So,
Sometime
you
in
know.
April, it'll be available on CD, vinyl.
Oh, nice.
Believe it or not,
Good.
we make vinyl. Oh yeah, yeah. People are buying vinyl these days a lot, and then a digital format, streaming and downloading, and then we may be doing cassettes as well. Remember cassettes?
Of course. That's great. No, some of this retro stuff. I mean, I've heard this said before for years, actually, that there's something that is an intangible warmth on vinyl that digital has never been able to replicate. It's kind of like the difference between a drummer and a drum machine is that a drum machine is precise. It's a metronome, literally. I mean, it's locked, but it's almost like that human touch of maybe once in a while being a little lag or a little ahead or a little bit harder on the tom than they did the second. That human incongruity that isn't always perfectly makes it feel more alive and more human,
Right.
and more I don't know if I'm overthinking it, but it does seem like there's something beautiful about something dragging over vinyl to give us the sound as opposed to this electronic cloud that's holding this. It just feels too clinical, and I feel like it loses the beautiful club experience of live, which is, I think vinyl got as close as you can get to that without obviously seeing them live. So I don't know if that's go ahead.
Back in the 70s and 80s, and of course the 60s, everything was analog. And then we eventually started moving into a digital world in the 80s. But prior to that, everything would be taken to a mastering house, whether it was Capitol or Bernie Grunman or Sony or whoever was mastering that album. It would be taken to them on a reel to reel. It would be that you walk in with tape and say, here you go. They'd put it on, they'd master it, EQ it, compress it. And then in the 80s, when we started, buying CDs, that analog tape would get mastered and pressed to vinyl, which would remain analog, and then to a CD, which would become digital. Now, for the most part, everything's done digitally. So you walk in with files, you send them files, wave files, and then they master that, and then it goes to vinyl or CD. So really, it's not a true analog experience. And when you're buying vinyl nowadays, unless it says so, and they mastered from analog. So I can hear the difference between a full digital project versus a full analog project. There is a warmth that comes with the analog sound, and something in the low end, really more so specifically, you can feel and hear. It's a different experience altogether. Oh yeah.
Isn't that fascinating? And I was going to ask you, so you already said, I wondered if you could even hear it, because your ear is so conditioned to nuances because that's your job and your career. So you have to hear what others don't hear. Well, listen, brother, we're over an hour. I can, go longer, but I don't want to keep you because, you were gracious enough to be here. So I wanted to ask you just one kind of final, if you don't mind, question. It's more just fun, but I'm just like to get a vibe for your character, your personality. We started this talking about two Christ followers who happen to have chosen a performance art to tell our, God's story and do what we do. It happens to be in two different realms, but we both are telling stories with words and rhythms. Usually the drummer is the funniest guy in the band because comedy is about rhythm and beats. But anyways, so I just wanted to leave you with this kind of little, I don't know, silly thing, but I just want to know. I want you to, if you could, and I'm putting you on the spot, give me 3 of your favorite Christian songs that you've ever heard. I don't care what genre, I don't care if it's old, new, whatever.
Yeah.
And then I'm going to ask you for 3 of secular or mainstream songs that you consider the most Christian,
Okay.
but they're mainstream. So choose each one. You can go either one first, but
Okay. Well, first of all, I would consider this a Christian song, and I would have to put this in my list, my top 10 list. And we did a cover of it acoustically. It's the song, the old hymn, "Amazing Grace."
oh yeah,
Even though that's been covered so much, that song is so powerful. Oh my word, musically and lyrically. So I'm gonna put that in that 3. In terms of another song, Christian song, I would say the problem is I have trouble remembering the names of the songs.
okay,
But I would say I would choose probably there's an artist, and it's gonna slip my mind. I'm not even gonna recall her name, so I'm not even gonna go there. More recent, she has an amazing song that really moved me. But going back, let's go back a little bit further. I'm gonna go with Michael W. Smith. Um, there is a song that he had that we did a cover of as well that everyone knows. Such a great song, and it's called "Friends."
oh yeah,
And I don't know if you remember that.
of course,
"Friends are friends forever." If the
yeah.
Lord, yeah, such a great song. So I'm gonna go with that one, and then a third Christian song. Let's go with another hymn because this one really moves me every time I sing it or hear it, and that is "It Is Well With My Soul."
Okay, okay, yeah, nice. That's well, and that I'm sure you know the backstory of that song, but the guy,
Yeah, I do.
I
Yeah,
mean, talk about
wow.
woo, talk about
I know.
taking it to the limits. You know, Christians in China
Yeah.
get thrown in prison. It pretty much goes with the territory,
Yeah.
and they say this prayer: "Thank you, God, for
Yeah.
allowing me to share in your suffering."
Yeah.
And that's never taught in American Christianity because we're the most shallow, superficial, weakest of all the Christians worldwide because we're not persecuted yet. Well, it's kind of coming now, and we need to be. It's the purging. It's how God does the work. Are
Yep.
you serious about this or not? But has anybody ever taught you sharing in the suffering? Christians in America see suffering as an aberration. Something has happened, we're being attacked, and we need to overcome it and be released from it. Now, of course, there's
Yeah.
nothing wrong with wanting to be healed of cancer or whatever.
Yeah.
But to be in that moment as a sacred experience that you get to replicate Jesus's experiences, that you get to take a turn being Jesus, that's something that's unheard of in the Christian American. And we need to return to that because that song about "It's Well With Your Soul," who lost his entire family in a sunken ship,
Yeah.
and to take that moment and go,
I
"I'm
know.
still here, Father," and the Lord giveth, the Lord taketh away. Blessed be the name of the Lord, holy. But to live it as opposed to read about it or speculate on it or make a bumper sticker out of it, but to live it in real time.
That's the real deal. Real deal.
That's the real deal, and very difficult. I'm going to you didn't mention this, but I'm going to throw it out since I've got you. What did you think about "I Can Only Imagine" as a song?
I mean, I've sung that song many times, leading worship.
Okay, I just wondered if you consider, because it was one of those few that crossed over into the mainstream because it was so beautiful in not being so it was Christ specific to a degree, but it also felt like Amazing Grace in that a secular guy can sing it and just love it melodically, and it still had, I mean, the line I once was lost but now I'm found, was blind but now I see, has become ubiquitous for anybody's story, Christian or not, because it's just perfectly articulated.
100%. And that's a great song. And that to me was a song that came out when, worship music started to really, when it was in the heart of being very popular and everyone, it was just lots of stuff coming out and churches adding all those new songs every week to their, their program and whatnot. That song was one that we did a lot in church back in the day when I led worship. And I love that song. I think it's great.
Yeah.
Um,
I just
but
curious.
now I wouldn't put that in the category of what I was talking about earlier, of the cookie cutter, and
Yeah,
you
yeah.
know,
No. I don't think so either. I think it,
yeah,
but again, I think the proof is in the pudding. I think a song finds itself by the way
yeah,
people respond to it. You can't
yeah,
force. That's why there's one hit wonders.
yeah,
Once in a while you catch lightning in a bottle, but
yep, yeah.
if you can't replicate it, you didn't really have the goods. You just got lucky. But
Yeah.
so give me three songs that are secular mainstream, and of course your catalog of knowledge of that would be pretty extensive because you're in that world, that you consider equally connected to God, in that it just has enough of that essence that it could be considered a Christian song, even if they didn't know that's what they were
Yeah.
writing, right?
Wow, gosh, there's so many over the years. But ones that come to mind, a song that always makes me, I go by, does it make you feel good or does it make you feel bad? Does it touch you or does it not? You know, I get an amazing feeling whenever I hear this song, and I always have, and that's the song "More Than a Feeling"
Oh
by
yeah, yeah,
Boston.
yeah.
It's just nothing bad lyrically, musically. It's like, wow, you know, it takes you to another place in a good way, makes you feel good. So I would put that song on my list probably. I would say, now this is going to be weird, but I got to put it on. I used to put this song on rotation when I would fill my orders. I used to stuff envelopes with CDs and go to the post office to mail my CDs back in 2000, like 2000, 99, 2000. And I would put this song on repeat, and it just made me feel good. Made me smile, made me tap my foot, and it got me through the day of stuffing envelopes. And it was a song by ABBA, Dancing Queen.
Wow.
Now, is that an anointed song? No, I'm not saying lyrically it's a Christian song. It's just a feel good song. So
Yeah.
that's more the approach I'm taking.
Okay.
It makes me feel good. Another song, my third song, in terms of, oh gosh, this is a tougher question than I thought it would be. Ugh. There's so many. I'm going to get off of this interview and think, oh my gosh, 10 other songs they're going to come to mind. But
Well,
I don't know.
let me give you a couple that popped in my head that I do feel like in some ways lyrically, I'm not trying to take over your final. I still want to get that last song out of you, but that really to me actually, at least one for sure, really almost feels like a hymn, and that is "Bridge Over Troubled Water." It feels like a hymn.
Yeah.
It feels different than anything else. Beautiful, beautiful
Yeah,
song.
I agree with that.
And
That,
and
of
then
course.
a song that Paul McCartney, who, holy smoke, I think he said it's his favorite song ever, pop song, God Only Knows, by Brian Wilson, well, Beach Boys, but and even though that's talking about a woman, the lyrics are very much about the depth of love. That there's nothing, I may not all be in love, but as long as there's stars, and basically double talk, like there is no words to describe how much I need you in my life. Well, obviously put God there, and there you go. So that was just a couple, though, that I do feel for me almost moves you to tears, as though you're listening to a Christian song. So it makes me wonder, most musicians, when you talk to them, and as I'm talking to you right now, will tell you they don't know where the songs come from. I don't know how I did that. And sometimes some of the most amazing songs, I've heard this a million times, is I wrote that in 10 minutes. Like, what? Meanwhile, this other one, it took a month, but a guy said, I wrote in 10 minutes, and then it became the biggest song. But that muse, the idea of the muse, that thing out there, and the only shot I have it relating to it, because I am a comic, is I write my own jokes. So those are like lyrics, right? I mean, they're words that tell a story. But there becomes a time where, first off, I forget jokes because I'm on 7 albums. So I forget stuff I did back in the day. Literally have to revisit it if I wanted to do it again because I can't remember. I don't even do it anymore. I'm more interested in the new stuff than anything I used to do. But there comes a point, it's a surreal, odd space where after you deliver it and record it, so it's sealed forever.
Yeah.
You can listen to it sometimes and almost go, I don't even know if I wrote that because I don't know how that happened. I'm listening as though it's not mine. So it makes me wonder if the beauty of the reality is always out there like radio waves, and the musician just kind of tunes it in. He goes, oh, there it is. But it was already there. It wasn't yours. God just gave you access to it, and he spoke it through you. And I'm talking about secular folks too, who simply don't acknowledge it. So does that feel like I'm being romantic, or do you think there's something to that as far as where these things come from?
There's definitely something to that. Absolutely. And again, to me, it comes from the fact that God created music. Yeah. And I even posted something recently that said, I said, God created all music. And people are like, I would say all. Well, he created music.
Yeah.
He's the creator. And so absolutely, 100% I agree with that. And that's why there are some mainstream songs, quite a few that have this powerful anointing on them. Like you're literally moved by God when you listen to these songs. And then I also claim earlier that you flip that coin. There are some Christian songs that, it's like, I want to say, turn that off. It's like,
you know what? I'm not trying to, I don't want to do this in a disparaging way, but I wonder if you would give me an example. I mean, and again, it's just your perspective, if you don't mind. And if you don't, I'm not going to put you under the spot, but give me an example of a song that you feel like, because maybe Christians in America need to be more sophisticated in understanding how we're supposed to represent our faith. We should be the best we should be the best cobbler. We should be the best mechanic. We should be the best of artists. And so I don't mean to put a guy down for this. So maybe this isn't really a fair question to you, but can you give me an example of a song you feel like this isn't a good rap, man? This doesn't hold up. I don't know.
I literally would have to give that some thought, but I could probably come up with a list of probably about 100 songs for you. But I would certainly want to give that some thought before I just throw out a song. There are first of all, I don't listen to a lot of Christian music. I don't listen to a lot of music in general.
Mm-hmm.
When I get in the car, and I'm driving down the road, it's quiet. There's nothing going on. Or I'll put on talk, or I'll put on this, or I'll put on that, but usually not music. But that being said, regardless, I'd have to give that some thought.
Yeah.
But I mean, I am saying it, openly that there are some Christian songs where I'm hearing them and thinking, wow, I'm not feeling what everyone else is feeling from this particular song. And it's a big hit, #1 on Christian radio. And everyone's talking about how powerful and anointed it is. And I'm like, I'm not hearing that. I'm not feeling that at all. But I am with Bridge Over Troubled Water or this song, you know what I mean? It's
No, I felt the same. I don't listen to a lot of contemporary Christian music, and far be it from me. I don't want to sound arrogant or legalistic or pharisaical. It's just something feels like it's contrived, like they're trying too hard to show how spiritual it is. And I don't think it works that way. I think it comes because it's organic, because something moved you, because I just got the call that they all died. And he goes, it is well with my soul. Holy, that can't be manipulated. You had to live with it. You had to deal with it. And then you said, I'm not going to waste this pain. I'm going to write it down forever so somebody can be moved and healed from this. I don't get to change this. They're gone. But what if I healed others with it? That is a song. And that's hard to do, man, because you're vulnerable. And so I just, anyways, I don't even know what I was getting at. And like I said, I wasn't trying to throw somebody under the bus, but
I understand. I know you're not trying to do that. I've been in the Christian music world and I love it. Some of my dearest friends are in that world, the CCM world. And Stryper sold albums on both sides, mainstream Christian. I've gone and played churches. I've played Christian bookstores. I've been signed to Christian labels. I mean, I've done all that. But this kind of shows you, this story will show you the mentality behind a lot of Christian labels. I remember I walked in and I was meeting with a label called Benson Records. I signed a deal with them. They released my first solo album. I had a song on that album. Everyone can go and hear it on YouTube or, streaming. It's called Jesus. So it's called Jesus. And the chorus is Jesus. It's like an anthem. And you're singing, Jesus over and over again on the choruses. And one of the guys in the meeting at that label said, hey, he was listening to the songs and he stopped the music and he said, hey, I just want to say, is there any way, Michael, you could get the name Jesus in there just a little bit more? I felt like, wow.
Oh.
And the reason he was saying that is because at the time, that's what it was all about. Being, taking it to radio, the more you have Jesus in the lyric, the better the odds are that they're going to play it. And I felt like, wow, that is so weird. So weird. Because if you write a song from the heart and the Holy Spirit's leading you to write it, and the name Jesus isn't in there one time, they want to have this cookie cutter mentality.
Right. Well,
And
that's what I mean about it being contrived. You're manipulating an emotion as opposed to it being, from the spirit, and it shows. And if people are used to superficial means by which they participate in God in church and so forth, then it'll be enough for them because they had never taken it deeper anyways. But that's why, I guess, going back to the Psalms, I just feel like they won't allow us to not resolve, but that's a story too. Sometimes the story isn't I got healed. Sometimes the story is, here's how God walked with me while I was still sick. Here's what happened when they never returned. And yet I'm still here. And yet he has never forsaken me. And yet one day it'll all be better again. That story, I think, is more important because, frankly, that's a story most of us find ourselves in one day. And without somebody letting us know that this doesn't mean something went wrong. This is part of your journey and your story. And it's just as good and important, if not more so. I don't need to teach somebody how to be happy when they're happy. Yep. I need to teach them how to be at peace when everything seems to have been stripped away. That is a story that is more important because that's where we find ourselves potentially in the most despair or in the most balance. I've been rich, I've been poor, but I've learned this one thing: in all things, be content. If you find peace, irrespective of what's happened around you, you are a fully orbed, balanced man. And you can show people that's what they're looking for, buddy. Show me the way home. I ain't happy. How do I get out of here? And that's what you have been doing, Michael Sweet, and Stryper has been doing for years and years. God bless you for standing firm and being a warrior, even when other believers were not behind you, praying for you. But folks, what I'm telling you right now is do, in fact, that very thing. Pray for Michael Sweet. You don't have the guts to go into clubs and do it. You don't have the gift, but he's doing it. So lift him up. You don't have the guts or the courage or the ability to be Stryper. That's not an attack. You've got your own skill set, but he's got his. So pray for him. And by the way, the master plan's coming out in April. Get that album. Quit complaining about everything you don't like about America and about the culture, and start investing in stuff you do like. You want to see more Michael's Sweet stuff and Stryper stuff? Buy his stuff, and then people will allow him to make more. This is the expectation of the Christian. Quit complaining. Start acting like you believe in this stuff and put your money where your mouth is. Start sacrificing for those of us who are doing the heavy work in the hard places where all the, I heard a long time ago, like Stryper, the trailblazers take all the arrows because they're there first. Well, he's taking a lot arrows. He's still here, unapologetic about his faith, and a man that you can be proud of and emulate as you go forth in your life, whether it's to be an artist or whether it's to be a mechanic. Be a Christ follower, unapologetic. And one day, when it's all said and done, we will know what this was all about, and it'll be worth every bit of it. Folks, remember, if they ever say you are being unwoke or politically incorrect, always say thank you for the compliment. That means you are a truth teller. The most important thing a Christian can be right now, tell the truth. We're the last truth tellers on earth. And me, just a comic, but I love coming and ministering to you folks too, with funny, but with unapologetic truth. And my job is to do what I'm doing, I hope, every Monday, and that is putting the woke back to sleep. See you next Monday.